Hi everyone, my name is Meir Gabay from Prodops. Today we are going to do an interview with Guy Spiegelman. This interview is part of the healthcare industry interviews that Prodops are doing over the past few weeks. And today we're going to have Guy. So guys from AWS, Guy, tell us about yourself.
Hey, thanks very much for having me. Guy Spiegelman. I have the privilege to be at AWS, Amazon Web Services, and leading up the work we do with healthcare and life science startups and the ecosystem around them in Europe, Middle East, and Africa. Just a couple of words on my background. Before this, I was in venture capital at Amoon, a large venture fund investing in healthcare life science startups. And before that, a bunch of startups myself starting in software and then healthcare and medical device startups. Healthcare is an incredible place to be, and the technology that is sort of so fast expanding and growing and influencing healthcare, and as we see through the COVID-19, is really impacting our lives. And so it's a great privilege to be able to work with the startups who are changing the world.
Okay, great. So now I have a lot of questions for you, Guy, but we're going to need to limit it. So let's start. First of all, I heard a lot about all of those AI and machine learning and everything related to healthcare. So how can we use AWS and generally AI and machine learning when it comes to healthcare? What's the correlation between them, the relationship between them?
Sure. I mean, perhaps if we take it one step back, let's think about what are the challenges we're hearing from the healthcare and life science industry, and then what are those key challenges, and then perhaps we can then add how AI, ML, and AWS can help. So, there's a real trend over in the United States, but also worldwide, to what's called value-based care. But that requires data-driven decision-making. And many of the companies and healthcare systems just don't have access to a good pool of data, because sometimes the medical records, they're written in free text, or they're not structured. So it's very hard to know how to make these data-driven decisions. We hear a lot about decision burnout. So doctors, they're getting tired, not just because of COVID and all the work around COVID, but all the admin. When you go to a doctor's office and they're typing more than they're looking at you in the eyes. So we hear a lot about that. The IT systems in healthcare are outdated. Complying and everything you need to do around compliance and privacy and security, that's becoming more of a challenge. And probably one of the biggest changes that we've seen in healthcare over the last several years is that the customer in healthcare, the patient, they want an experience similar to their experience of shopping or other industries, which has been helped so much by technology. So how does AI and ML address some of these points? And I don't have time to go through all of them, but definitely we have some big buckets here. So care quality improvement, like that's one area which is really what we want to see. We want to see better clinical outcomes for less money. And so if we take the area of like imaging and radiology, imagine, and hopefully this will never happen to you or your family, but at 3 a.m. and you have a head injury and you go to a hospital and there's a third-year resident there. He's maybe seen 20 cases like yours. Or you could put the scan through one of the amazing startups that are coming out of Israel, Viz.ai, ADOC, Zebra, all AWS customers, and they can compare it to 100,000 other images, right? And come up with a much better recommendation of what's probably going on with your brain at that moment. So that's just one example of care quality improvement. Another example would be operational efficiency. How when I make a telephone call into a health system, they know about my data so that when the nurse answers the phone, they've already got a likely scenario of what I'm going to be asking and can direct my phone call that much better to the right professional. Increasing customer engagement. We want to be able to access customers at the time and place of their choosing. So this is all areas where AI and ML can help. But probably the biggest area that we see a lot, which is really requiring AI/ML, is everything around converting the billions of records of medical text into structured data and then adding rules onto that data to lead to actions. And for that purpose, AWS launched about a year and a half ago a service called Amazon Comprehend Medical, which essentially takes a bit of unstructured text, let's say notes from a visit to an oncologist. So cancer is very complicated. It's not just checking boxes. They're going to be writing a whole ream of text. Well, that's great, but then how do you access that in any sort of intelligent way afterwards? So what Comprehend Medical does, it's an API call, so very simple to use. You send the text over to Comprehend Medical. It will return back in a structured format. It will outline the demographics, the indications, the therapeutics, and the recommendations. And then you can have that rules-based and linked to an action that goes on afterwards.
Is it based on data, like previous data from other hospitals? Like, how do you know how to?
Comprehend Medical was developed based on Comprehend, which is our non-vertical medical version, and then added on with reams and like literally millions of medical records that then was validated with medical specialists. So this is it comes ready. You don't need to be a data scientist to access it. And that's something that's important to know, that with AWS, we have three levels of AI/ML, artificial intelligence and machine learning. We've got our infrastructure stack. So the people who really know how to do the coding in the base languages, right? The Kubernetes, the Python, and so forth. And so this stack is for the real experts. In the middle, we have a layer, the SageMaker layer. So this is where you have your data scientists, but you want to reduce the heavy lifting. You want to take away the DevOps or the ML ops away from the data scientists so they can focus on what they're really good at. And at the third level is our ML services. And so these ML services, there are things like Comprehend Medical, or they're things like Textract, being able to take out text from just a scanned document.
And are they all HIPAA compliant? Like, how do I know that as a hospital, if I want to use this technology, or a startup that works with hospitals?
A great question. Let's talk about that. So first of all, the services are HIPAA eligible. So in AWS, we work with what's called a shared responsibility model. So our services are eligible to be HIPAA, but your application also needs to meet the HIPAA rules. And the two together, when the startup or the organization signs a BAA with us, then it's a HIPAA compliant application. But yes, services are eligible for HIPAA once your application, what you're responsible for, is also compliant with HIPAA. But I'll take it one step further. I mentioned the imaging space before. So if you take a scanned X-ray, usually the X-ray will have on it the patient information. Now, let's say for whatever reason, maybe it's a data residency law, that scanned image can't go into the cloud, but it needs to in order to do some sort of processing, which can't take place on-prem. So using Amazon Rekognition, we can identify where there is text on the image, blot it out, okay, send the image up to the cloud, do the processing, send it back, re-identify on-prem so it hasn't gone to the cloud, and and give the result that's needed.
So that's an agent that you install locally on your machines?
No, the Rekognition is a service that's in the cloud, but you can have an edge version which can do the de-identification for you.
Okay, so the de-identification happens where?
On-prem.
Okay, yeah, that's usually hospitals, that's where they aim for everything to happen in the hospital itself or in the country,
There are a lot more openings to using cloud in hospitals. So in Israel, for example, and many places, as long as the data is in Europe, you can actually have patient information in the cloud. Obviously, you have to set it up securely and everything else. And many in the UK, for example, they have a cloud first policy now. So if a hospital system in the UK, or a trust, what they call it in the UK, wants to update their data center, they actually have to justify doing it on-prem now, because the government has said we prefer you to be on cloud. And why is that? It's because they realize that AWS invests so much in its data infrastructure and security around that data center infrastructure that there's no way that a local hospital in the north of England can compete with the level of security and compliance that we can provide. And more we're seeing hospital systems and other parts of the healthcare system realize that actually the cloud is secure, and that while sometimes there are challenges and leaks, if you like, that's usually because of a human error that could have taken place exactly as if, even if the box was under someone's desk, right? It's the same kind of error. So exposing data to the internet. So it's not to do with the cloud itself. It's to do with processes, and that's something that each organization needs to work on.
Okay, great. So I think now that the last topic that I would like to talk about, like before we wrap it up, I heard about this new service in AWS related to healthcare, the Health Lake. Health Lake. So if you can just give a few words about it, just talk, which challenge does it solve? What's the main challenge that it solves? Because usually you make, AWS create a service to solve a challenge. So what's the challenge for that?
So there is so many types of healthcare data, right? Let's think about it. You have your electronic medical records. You have data coming in from sensors. Let's say someone's in a hospital and they have all these sensors, and that is just, exporting data to a system. You've got genomics data. Again, there can be data from multiple systems. How is that data all being put in one place so that we can have a complete view of a single patient or a cohort of patients? It's incredibly difficult to do. And so what Amazon Health Lake is, it's a HIPAA eligible service that enables healthcare providers, health insurance companies, and pharmaceutical companies to store, transform, query, and analyze health data at petabyte scale. So, and there are 5 sort of elements to it. 1, you can import quickly and easily medical records and clinical notes, lab reports, and more. Now, and you can put sensor data, everything that can go in. You can store that data in the cloud in a secure, compliant, and auditable way. You can transform it. So you can automatically tag and transform that data and normalize it so that you can have a single view of a patient from all their different data sets that have come in. A bit of genomics, a bit of electronic medical record, a bit of sensor data. You can get a single view of that patient. Query and search, really powerful query and search capabilities, and then analyzing relationships in the data and adding in analytics and ML capabilities. And so really, we're taking a lot of the heavy lifting out and bringing in disparate systems and creating one interface for your healthcare data.
And where does the you talked about the anonymization, the identification of users. So where does it happen if it happens? It sounds like this specific Health Lake does not care about identification. It sounds like you do want to store your patient's info in the cloud. So
that's what the customer of the Health Lake is. Like if the Health Lake is a hospital system itself, they want to know who the patients are, right?
Okay.
Like that's the whole idea. Yeah. But what you can do, let's say big hospital system, they want to maybe utilize their data to help startups innovate or to help a big pharmaceutical company run research. Using Health Lake and other infrastructure we can have, we can create a process where that data, when it is made available to the pharma company or to the startup, is de-identified. But for the doctor who's now on shift, she needs access to actual information, right? She needs to see what the patient, what the history of that specific patient is, and make recommendations. So again, it's about making that process around healthcare data appropriate and easy to handle so that the clinicians get the data, the full data with personal health information, and the researcher who maybe is outside the organization will not get access to it.
And can you configure, usually we use big data, you can configure IOPS or something like that. So I'm not sure if it's part of the service or not, because it sounds like it's a fully managed service and maybe you don't need to do anything. But is there a way to configure like a standard use, advanced use, or a high performance use for this Health Lake? Or if I'm using it, it means that it's just fully automatically scalable and I don't need to choose anything. Is it fully managed, or do I need to configure like standard performance?
There's a lot to do to set it up. I don't have the complete answer to your question. That's the truth. It's very new. Okay. It's in preview mode. It's just a sort of window of what's coming, but it is now in preview mode, and companies are using it and getting great value from it already.
So we'll have to do another meeting to hear more about it.
I think that's the logical conclusion there.
Yeah. Okay. So, Guy, thank you very much for being with us today, and we're definitely going to have another interview soon.
Appreciate that. So you keep well too. Thanks a lot.
Thank you very much. That's all.